Okay, good evening, everyone. We are on page. You ready for it? Ready for it? No, I got the wrong page. We are on. No, I got the wrong page twice there. No, this is automatic. Okay, here we go. We're on page 30. Leaving in the middle of a meal, page 30. Okay, we are going to talk about all the scenarios of what happens if I'm in the start of meal and then I want to go somewhere else. And what happens if there's a party and some people stay and some people go? Can I come back? Can I change? What happens there? We may even, depending how fast we go tonight, but probably go into another time. What happens if I'm eating on the fly? What should I do there? Can I eat on the fly? Should I eat on the fly? Talmud has lots to say about that. But all of that is way down the list. What we're going to look at now is on page 30, leaving in the middle of the meal. Okay, so in this section, we will discuss a different question pertaining to berachot recited during a meal, known as shinui makom, which means changing your location. Whether one who leaves in the middle of a meal and returns needs to make another beracha. Okay, so we're going to learn the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim. It says as follows: the two, and furthermore, Yativ Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda was sitting, v'ka'amar, and he said the following mishmei, in his own name. I want to quote myself. The mishmei de nafshe. Ha de amarat shinui makom tzarich levarech. That which you said, that when you change your place, you need to make a new beracha. Lo amran ela b'devarim she'ein te'unin bracha la'acharehen bimkoman. That's only, when do I need to make that? When do I need to make a new beracha when I change my place? When we only say that with regard to one who eats items of food that do not require beracha after them in their original place. You're like, what type of thing is that? So the translation helps us out. For example, water or even fruit. Aval devarim hateunin bracha la'acharihen bimkoman ein tzarich levarech. However, if one is eating items of food that require a beracha after them, for example, I need to make Birkat Hamazon because I've had a bread meal, and I need to make that bracha, and I need to make that bracha in their original place where I was. Okay, I don't need to make a bracha. Why? Why? Says the Gemara, my time. What's the reason for this? Lekiv'a kama hadar. He returns to the originally established meal when he continues eating, and he certainly intended to continue that meal. What's it mean here? It's a very, very strange language, which is, if I have a bread meal and I start it in my house and I then go and have a snack in my neighbor's house, what am I going to do? Go back to my house, because I'm having my meal there. It's like saying, if I start having a glass of water in my home, and then I go to, Charisma's house for a meal, the glass of water I had, or the fruit that I had, doesn't hold me back saying, oh, you know what? I've got to go back to my house. I just started a meal of water. It's just not the way it's done. So the Gemara is trying to say, what are you doing? If you are in the midst of a meal, you are going home. If you're not in the midst of a real meal, it's not really something you're thinking about. That's the first position.
Well, I just want to understand the beracha at the end, unless we're going to discuss that more later. Do we mean that if it ends with Borei Nefashot, it doesn't matter, but beracha me'en shalosh or Birkat Hamazon, it does? Is that the distinction we're making? The Borei Nefashot's not really?
The Borei Nefashot was the question of how much water he's been drinking anyway. But yeah,
if I'm eating my melon, which we are experts in melon now from last week.
Right.
And I'm on like my fourth piece of watermelon or whatever, I would say a Borei Nefashot on that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have the same status. Is that what we're saying? As
From this Gemara, it seems to be that again, it's hard to learn straight out of the Gemara, but it seems to be from this Gemara, the after bracha, whether it's, and specifically here, Birkat Hamazon, because in those times, and again, until modern times, a bread meal, a Birkat Hamazon meal was critical. The person is going to go back home. Okay, they're going to go back to their meal. Food was not as prevalent. Ready-made food wasn't as prevalent. People would always go back to where they are. They're not going to start and get up and get back. They're not having snacks as much. It could well be that the Talmud, they also had a situation of one morning meal or one daytime meal, one evening meal. They weren't really snackers the way that we are. So that's what they're saying. If you're just snacking on water or fruit, that's not the same as if you're having your main seudah. And then the Gemara says then, the last line of that first source, Rav Sheshet Amar, Rav Sheshet said, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh tzarich levarech. Both in this case and that case, whether or not one is eating food that requires a bracha afterward in the place where he ate, if he changes location and continues eating, he must recite a new beracha in the new place. So Rav Sheshet seems to be holding more like where you are, which is, I don't get it. If I finish where I was or I change where I was, the new place is going to define my new reality. And therefore, I'm certainly going to need to establish a new beracha. So what we have here, let's have a look here, because it's a little complicated. We'll just read in this pink passage right below it. Rav Chisda draws a distinction between different types of food. An item which requires a beracha achrona, which requires an after blessing, in the place where he ate, for example, bread, does not require bracha when he returns and wishes to eat more. Why? It is assumed he did not yet intend to conclude his meal due to the need to return to his location to recite Birkat Hamazon. What does it mean? And I'm going to tell you a little bit more here, which is I cannot have lunch, get preoccupied, go and walk 2 blocks away and say, I'm doing Birkat Hamazon there. I have to go back and do Birkat Hamazon where I ate. So it's saying, because I know I have to go back, that's enough. I haven't really changed my location because I'm going to go back there and finish. If one was eating foods that does not require a bracha achrona in the place where he ate, okay, which is the bracha of borei nefashot, I can make borei nefashot wherever I want because it's a snacking. I'm having some fruit on the fly. I'm having some drinks, whatever. I can make borei nefashot wherever I want. It's not stuck with where I was. Then that would require, so that's what's happening here. So if one was eating food that does not require a bracha achrona in the place where he ate, such as food upon which the berachot of shehakol, ha'etz, or ha'adama are recited, then one must recite a bracha if he returns and wishes to eat more, or if he wishes to eat more in another location, because we're saying you keep on getting distracted there. Like, come on, ADHD. If you're here, you're there. You're here, you're there. Every time you change your place, every time you change your intent inside, I've got to do a new first bracha and then a new after bracha to conclude. So what it's saying is, if I know that I'm getting up, I really should do an after bracha when I'm done. Now, where's that not the case with Birkat Hamazon? With a bread meal, because of the halacha of a bread meal, where I must do Birkat Hamazon in the place where I ate, and this is important, I have to come back there. So it could be when I leave, let's say someone comes over, Rabbi, you need to come over. Okay, you need to come down to the Klein Gallant. I go down to the Klein Gallant, and then I come back. I don't need to wash and say Hamotzi again because I never did Birkat Hamazon. But if I was having a snack, change places, change direction, I'm like, my head's 1,000 miles an hour. I may not come back to that. So it's saying on that one, finish off. And let's say I didn't. Let's say I didn't do the after bracha. And then someone grabs me another drink or another snack, I would need to make a new bracha. I never had in mind to it. But since I haven't done Birkat Hamazon on the bread meal, I'm going to come back. I'm going to do it. Again, if your head is spinning on this, it's not so straightforward here. What I want to take from this is as follows, okay? Birkat Hamazon must be done where I ate. I get up in the middle to take care of whatever the business is. The grandkids come over. I got to go and take care of them. You come back. You're not doing Birkat Hamazon in their house. You got to do Birkat Hamazon where you ate. And so therefore, leaving, I don't need a new bread. So I could go back to that meal, provided it hasn't been a very, very long. We're going to talk about how long the time you can wait. But let's say it's a short time, 20 minutes. I can go back, have some more bread. I don't need to wash and make hamotzi again. Okay, the Birkat Hamazon would be there. That makes sense. But the snacking, okay, especially on non-grains, when I leave, I don't have intent to return. Okay, if I don't have intent to return, and think about a lot of halachot. Like, let's say, for example, I want to take off food from the hot plate or from the crock pot, and I want to return it. There are rules around that, which are, did I have da'at? Did I have intent to return it? Is my hand still on it? There are certain things which are required in that space. Here, the fact that I have to do Birkat Hamazon, that's my da'at. That's my intent that I'm coming back. That's not the case when I've had a snack. When I've had a snack, I'm on my way. I'm going. Okay, Rav Sheshet, on the other hand, that's Rav Chisda. Rav Sheshet, on the other hand, maintains that one must recite the bracha when returning and eating more in both cases. So we're going to have to try and see which one makes sense. Does Rav Sheshet make sense, or does Rav Chisda make sense? Do we like this understanding that bread is different because of the Birkat Hamazon, or do we say that Rav Sheshet makes sense? That whenever I leave, my mind considers myself as if I've finished that item. Okay? And I can't tell you, I don't think it happens to me that often. But there have been times where I get up to take care of something. Am I going to come back there? If it's a proper meal, Rav Chisda makes sense to me. Rav Sheshet, I'm not sure. So what do you think? I'll open it up. What do you think?
Well, it's like a daily question for me.
Okay, tell me, Cormac.
When I have my bagel in the office every morning, there will always 100% be a phone call where someone out there needs me to go out for a period of time, and I have to get back looking at my half bagel and think about, do I need to wash, or is this still valid, covered within the Birkat Hamazon period of time?
Great. That's a great scenario. Okay, you're going to have a bagel. You're even maybe in your standing desk. You're not even sitting. You might literally, okay, I got called. I've got to open the door on the other part of the building. Maybe I'll carry on snacking, or I'll carry the bagel in my hand. Yeah, that's a lot of questions. Again, I don't think so. I make a conscious effort when I can to go home and have lunch and or have breakfast where I sit down and I don't, even if I'm answering something, I'm not going to go off mid breakfast. I'll finish and then I'll take care of it. But if you're more likely, no, the phone is gone, I need to act right away. These halachot could be, if you're in the, let's imagine in DC, you're in the office, you're handing a call, and you completely forget about what else you were doing, or you got to go and what happens there?
Happens to me all the time.
Okay, so here the Gemara asks, and the commentaries address a number of questions. Okay, just noting here that Susan is on the live, and she writes, "It seems there's a factor of formality." Absolutely, I think that's also true. If you're doing, I'm formally dining, this is an important meal. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Shabbat or Yom Tov meal. This could be a Sunday family brunch. Everyone's over. And we're sitting in the dining room. That could be more so than maybe we're just grabbing snacks and watching a football game. I think it really depends what the scenario is on what's happening here. But the question now follows: are we going to do we like Rav Chisda's position that it's about? It's about whether it was a bread meal or not, and when I need to come back for Birkat Hamazon, or we're going to hold by Rav Sheshet. As soon as I'm out of the room, as soon as I change, I'm there, which might lead to a position which Susan is saying, which is it depends on the type of meal rather than the type of food in the meal. I'm seeing Mark has added here. He says he always gets hung up by intent. We don't always know what our intention is. Yeah, I think that's a problem, which is, do I have intent when I make a decision? Like, I'm sitting down, is that enough to say, the phone is off, there are no distractions? I mean, I think this is also important, that this issue may come up more in work life issues, more so than obviously Shabbat and holiday issues, where the phones are off. There aren't likely to be as many distractions. So there's some things here to consider where that is. So the questions,
there tends to be something also about a meal eaten alone. That when you're eating something, you're eating a sandwich alone and someone else needs you, you go to run to that person. When you're eating with others, you are less likely to unglue from the others to reach out to someone else. And I think that eating with others then makes it a more formal meal to which you're going to come back.
Okay, so just for everyone on the on YouTube, the Rubisa said that maybe because you're eating alone during the week, again, it's a meal which I'm squeezing in between things. When somebody comes, a child or whatever, a coworker, and they need something, it's going to drastically change what's happening. I also think it's the length of the meal. I know that when I have a lunch, especially if I'm eating alone, I know sometimes you criticize this, but I'm having my 5-minute oatmeal. I know that for those 5 minutes, no one's dragging me away from it. Like I can just for 5 minutes eat and go, and I won't have those pressures on me. But it could be if I am trying to do, it could be that, again, it's the multitasking, the issues, which is, what am I doing? Or dare I say, there might be, how important is my lunch compared to the needs of others? I don't want to say that I'm selfish, but I like to take care of my lunch, even if it's an insignificant meal like a bowl of oatmeal. I want to make sure I'm eating that, because then I won't be hungry later and I can handle all the issues for the rest of the afternoon or the rest of the morning. So to me, it's more important to take care of me so that I can take care of others. It could well be that there are several people, again, Sharona probably fits into this category, which is little old me. No, I don't need to take care of me. Someone else needs me. I'm going to go and run off and do that. And again, I don't know which one of how we all align on this, but I think there are times where the needs of others, the less formalness of it, the nature of what we're doing. Do I really need to eat? Like there are certain things which are going to play out here. Okay, so we have the Rav Chisda Rav Sheshet question. We also have, must one who changes places recite a new Beracha Rishona, a new first bracha when he returns, or must he also recite a Bracha Acharona on the food he ate previously, which is, do I need to finish the last one and then start all over again? Does it matter if others remain at the meal when one leaves? Okay, let's say, okay, I've got to run off, but everyone else is staying. Does their presence at the meal add further weight to me returning? What is the definition of Shinui Makom? What does it mean to change the place? Is that leaving one house? What happens if I change rooms? Does that changing everything here? How broad is the category of foods that do not require bracha in the original location? Is it just bread? What about grain products? What about fruits of the 7 species, like figs and grapes and pomegranates and dates? Do they fit into that part? Okay, I see there's another question here. A situation where this could come up is a large Shabbat dinner where a parent takes a child to bed. There's a break in the kavanah. There's also no certainty of return to the table. So I think, I think that's right. Again, I don't want to put gender positions here, but I feel like there may be some women who would feel that taking care of their child and making sure they go to bed is more essential. But there could be some men who may feel, okay, I'm having my steak, I'm having my meat, I'm not going to bed, or I'm not going to worry about that till later. So even a Shabbat meal could do that. We've seen that at long Seder meals, where you could be, okay, I've got to nurse, I've got to put the child to bed. There's some things where you don't know how long you're going to be away for, what happens here when one person is involved. And obviously, there again, for everything that I've said, there are men who are very sensitive to their children's needs, and there are women who are far more engrossed in the meal. And but what are the scenarios here where we want to get involved in? So the Rif and the Rambam are going to follow the opinion of Rav Sheshet. Okay, after all that I presented there, that the bread meal and coming back and needing to do Birkat Hamazon, that's not actually the case. We actually follow like Rav Sheshet, okay, who states you always recite Bracha Achrona and then a new Bracha Rishona, when leaving in the middle of a meal and then returning to eat more, even if one is eating bread. Okay, so it's the changing, the fact that I'm getting up. If I get up, again, I get a call, go to Klein Galland, you need to go and visit a patient, you need to go and visit a member, I would do Birkat Hamazon. Let's say it's a doctor on call. I've got to go. Okay, I don't know how long I'm going to be. Do Birkat Hamazon and then go. You come back, start again. Okay, the Rambam says, Haya ochel babayit zeh, if one was eating in one house, upsak sudato, he stopped his meal. V'halach labayit achen, he went to another house. Or shehaya ochel, or he was eating. V'karuhu chavero ledabeimo, and a friend called over to speak with him. V'yatza lo lepetach beito, and he went out to the entrance of his home. V'chazar, and he returned. Since he changed his place, tzarich lebarech, he needs to make a bracha lemafreya al ma she'achal v'chozer marech betchila hamotzi v'achar kach yigmor seudato. He must recite a bracha afterward for what he ate originally, i.e., do Birkat Hamazon, and then recite hamotzi again. And then he should finish his meal. What's going on here for the Rambam? Crossing the threshold, leaving the front door, I need to do Birkat Hamazon. Okay? That ended my meal. So let's say someone just knocks on the door, and you open it and you go out to them. That could be enough of a issue. In contrast, the Rosh and the Tosfot rule in accordance with the opinion of Rav Chisda, who makes a distinction between those foods that require bracha achrona in the place that one ate, and those that do not. As he says as follows, the Rashbam psak k'Rav Chisda. The Rashbam rules in like Rav Chisda. And therefore, since it was a bread meal, he knows, he has intent to return. And therefore, he doesn't need to make a bracha and continue. Okay? So it would only be an issue if it was a food which was not bread. So,
is the crossing the threshold the universal, or is that just Rambam?
The Rambam and the Rif. So we want to talk about big, heavy hitters. If I have the Shulchan Aruch, Maran bases his position on the three big Rishonim. Okay? The Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh. So here I have the Rambam and the Rif say, you leave, doesn't matter what you ate, you got to come back. Just like Rav Sheshet, even if it's just a short departure, the moment you leave your house, you are out. And I have the Rosh, which says, if it was a snack, you're right. I leave the house, even no matter how short, I've got to go back. But if it was a bread meal, no, the bread meal, I know I've got to say Birkat Hamazon, so I know I haven't finished.
But I'm trying to understand the...
So how we're going to follow, how the Shulchan Aruch is going to rule. It's important. Like, it doesn't matter, again, I hate to say it, but there are some Rishonim whose opinions don't count as much, which is for the Shulchan Aruch, I'm going to go by those three heavy hitters. When they have a machloket, the Shulchan Aruch has to make a decision. When it comes to the Ramah, he's far more interested in minhag. What is the custom? What is the practice in the locale? But for Shulchan Aruch, I'm interested in how those three do it. Now, he's very rarely going to do what's known as Dalad Ayin, Da'at Atzmo. What is his own opinion? He always wants to base his position on those three heavy hitters. Ramah will say, what is the custom in our countries? And Da'at Atzmo. What do I think? What's logical to me? Okay, there's a different way of understanding how situations are made. So, how's the Shulchan Aruch going to play it out? Turn over to page 32. And by the way, for those of you listening on board, I have one more book, or you can order it on Amazon. It's volume number 14 of Tzubim Rabbanan. I have one more. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with the opinion of the Rambam. The one who leaves must recite both a bracha achrona, okay, and a new bracha rishona. Okay, Susan has claimed the extra book. Okay, so we'll bring that back for you on the way. Okay, if he turns and wishes to eat more, even for a meal with bread. Okay, which is even for a meal with bread, it's not enough. As soon as I go out, the requirement of needing to do Birkat Hamazon is not compelling enough for the Rambam. The Ramah, on the other hand, rules in accordance with the Rosh, and that for a meal with bread, one need not recite either Birkat Hamazon or a new Bracha Rishona if he leaves and returns in the middle of the meal. Okay, so we're seeing here there's a difference in position between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. For Sfaradim, it's very simple. You leave no matter what type of meal, no matter what day of the week, whether it's Shabbat, whether it's a work day and I was grabbing a lunch. If I leave, I need to come back, finish with a bracha achrona, a last bracha, whatever it is, whether it's Birkat Hamazon, whether it's bracha me'en shalosh, or whether it's borei nefashot, whatever the after bracha is, I need to do that, and then do a new bracha rishona, first bracha, and then start again. Whereas the Ramah holds, if it was a bread meal, I'm fine. I can come back and continue where I left off. No bracha rishona, no bracha achrona. Just continue. I had a bit of a break. It doesn't matter. But for snacks, I would do a bracha achrona and then a new bracha. Okay?
I'm still trying to, I understand that distinction, but I'm still trying to understand, are we saying it's you going to the Klein, or is it you going upstairs to tuck in a kid? Does the geographical leaving the table and how far you're going make a difference? Okay,
so Sharona's again asking the question, does it matter how far I'm changing my place? Is it physically leaving the house and going away, like a doctor going on call? Or is it just I'm going to another room to grab a book, I'm going to another room to put a child down? What is considered Shinui Makom? The answer to those questions will come up on page 38. We're now on page 32. So we have to hold your horses and see what it is. What I'm trying to tell you is, that's a good question, which is, it does make a difference how far you're going. And so far, I would say that all the poskim and all the Rishonim and the Achronim are dealing with a scenario where you are indeed leaving the house. It doesn't seem like we haven't really addressed changing rooms, but I think we're going to get there. Just keeping up in the chat room here, it says, the person who leaves recites Birkat Hamazon when he returns. Exactly. If I'm not mistaken, the Gemara discusses where you can say Birkat Hamazon. Yes, so those are both yes and yes. So you need to go back and do Birkat Hamazon in the space where you are at, and specifically, ideally, in the same seat, the same position in the room that you are in, and all that we're going to hopefully address. So we've said the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah outside. You can see that on page 32 and the top of 33. Okay, now we're going to continue. The Mishnah Brura on 33 writes that according to the Shulchan Aruch, even moving for a short time would require a new beracha. Okay? So we're going to have to see. This is going to be very important because they haven't yet said, short time, I'm going to put a child down to sleep. That's going to be a problem. Or is it just leave for a short time out of the house? We need to really get to that one. It says here, and this is very important for us to know, notwithstanding the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch, many Sephardic poskim, such as the Yalkut Yosef, write that the halacha follows the opinion of the Ramah due to the principle of safek berachot lehakel. In a chance of a doubt, I will be lenient in making extra berachot. And therefore, one should not recite a second beracha. So this is important, which is you will rarely see Hacham Ovadia Yosef or any of his sons contradicting what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. In fact, that is their job. Their job is actually promoting Shulchan Aruch over the Turkish minhag, the Moroccan minhag, the Syrian minhag, the Persian minhag, the Iraqi minhag. They're not interested. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? So it's very interesting here where it says that the Yalkut Yosef, which is Rav Yitzchak Yosef, basically summarizing his father's rulings, that he wouldn't hold like Shulchan Aruch. He's saying, why? Because the Shulchan Aruch has another principle. So I'm not really contradicting the Shulchan Aruch. Though I'm contradicting him in this particular issue, I'm following a more general rule of his, which is, in a case of doubt, don't make a beracha. Because a bracha she'enat tzaricha, a bracha which I don't need to make, could be a beracha levatala. And so therefore, in that situation, even for Sfaradim, he would say, possibly, and not even possibly, I should not do that. Okay? Especially for the bread meal. I think they would all agree for the snacks that, for the bread meal, yes. For the bread meal that he said we should be like the Ramah with regarding bread, that he needs to, that he doesn't need to make a new bracha. He can continue the fact that that he started there, and his coming back to do Birkat Hamazon would define him. So what happens if some of the participants of the meal remain? Does that help us? Okay, now this is actually prevalent and discussed. Again, all these Gemarot in Masechet Pesachim deal with this regarding people who leave during the meal of the Seder, or people who fall asleep, and all these other scenarios. I'm just noting there's a couple more questions on the chat here. What would be the ruling on a sukkah hop if one eats shehakol? So exactly, do you need to do an after bracha after every sukkah that you leave? There's
a trendy thing in some communities where it's a I forgot the word.
Progressive
sukkah meal where you go from sukkah to sukkah with hamotzi in one and soup in the next and starters, and then you do the whole. Yeah,
it's very problematic. Thank you for bringing that up. It's The Rabisa talked about the custom of starting and having meals or courses in each one. Very problematic. I would say, again, we haven't finished everything that one of those classic ones, so I got it all wrong by the end of the class. But I would say that the bottom line is if you're moving, you should do an after bracha at the end of each sukkah. Okay, we're going to see. But again, when you're changing your makom, you're really changing your da'at. And can you say, can I have da'at to move to 4 or 5 different homes? No. Or 4 or 5 different sukkot? No, you've got to finish one, start again in another. Okay, Gemara Masechet Pesachim on top of page 34, source number 22, says, with regards to members of a group who are reclining to drink, reclining meaning that they are having a meal, okay, they're mesubin, and they uprooted themselves from their place to go and greet a chatan or a kala when they exit. These foods do not require a bracha to be recited afterward, and when they return, these foods do not require an introductory bracha. The Braita continues. In what case is this statement said? When they left a person there, for example, an older person or a sick person who cannot go with them. However, if they did not leave an older or a sick person when they left, they would require bracha when they return. Okay, so what's it saying here? When I go up and say, hold on, let's stop what we're doing. We're going to go Masameh Chatan V'Kala. We've been asked to go and dance at that wedding, like we used to do. You go, not in old days, weddings, you couldn't invite everyone, or you would just turn up for dancing afterwards to masameh chatan bakala. That making the chatan and kala happy would invalidate and say, you know what, you changed your mindsets, unless there were people remaining there. If there were no people remaining there, and it only needs to be one or two, there's no one there, you're over. So if you come back, I would need to do Birkat Hamazon or the after bracha and start again. So again, none of these are answering your question, which is what's really considered leaving, because all these are for sure I'm getting out of the house and going to a synagogue, going to another home and being mesameach.
No, it sounds like leaving people at the meal means that the meal formally has not ended, so you can go back to it.
Yes.
But is that only in the case of going?
Because you left people there?
Yeah. In other words, if you left people there and said, I'm going to put my kid to bed, does that mean the meal is not ended?
Correct. So here's an example. So one answer can be, if I'm leaving the room, but others are remaining, I have less of a concern because I'm putting down one of the children or the grandchildren to bed because others are there. I would not need to do a new bracha before or after. Okay? It would still continue. Correct. So again, that may resolve some of our situation where even if I am, the only issue would be if I'm the only one having the meal. For example, and again, that would be again to the level of the formality of the meal. So the Shulchan Aruch rules that if people remained at the meal, one who leaves need not recite a bracha rishona or bracha achrona when he returns, whether bread was served or whether only fruits or other shakol foods were served. Okay, that you can see there. You could turn over there the Piskei Teshuvot, give a few conditions, but we're going to go a little faster, okay? So if you turn to page 37, you have one of my favorite things. It's called the flowchart. I love flowcharts. Flowcharts are the best. This is how I would summarize any sugya. I want to see what are my positions and what are we going to do here. So it says here on page 37, Rav Chisda, or foods that require bracha achrona, when one ate, do not require new bracha if one leaves and returns. For example, that bread meal. Rav Sheshet says it doesn't matter, whatever you're eating. Okay, a new bracha is going to be needed to make, whether it's bread or not. Okay, now when others remained at the meal, I don't need to come back and make a new bracha because the others maintain the status of that meal. Now, the Rambam holds halacha sak Rav Sheshet, no matter what I'm doing. And so therefore, the only time I wouldn't do Birkat Hamazon and make a new hamotzi is if there were people still in the room, still in the table. But if everyone got up, I'm out of luck. Okay? Then we have the Rosh, the Ramah, etc., etc. Okay. And therefore, you can see there we are. Now, what we're going to do now on page 38 is get into our discussion about what is the definition of changing one's place. And I am going a little quicker because I feel like I want to get to the Rabisa's question and really address what it means to change your place. The Gemara says, Yativ Rav Idi Ba'avin Kamei Rav Chisda. So Rav Idi Ba'avin was sitting in front of Rav Chisda. Yativ Rav Chisda v'ka'amar mishmei Rav Huna. Rav Chisda was sitting and he was teaching something in the name of Rav Huna. Hada amart, that which you said, shinui makom tzarich levarech, that when you change your place, you need to do a new beracha, i.e., finish off the last one and start again. Lo shanu ela mibayit labayit. That's only when you change houses. But from one room to another, not so much. Okay? Why did I translate makom lemakom instead of from place to place, from room to room? That's the way Rashi translates it. What's makom lemakom? Mibayit la aliyah, from the main floor to the attic, from the living room and the dining room and the kitchen to the bedrooms upstairs. By contrast, look at Tosafot on the top of page 39. Shinui makom, hainu afilu bechad bayit. And the change of location requires one to make a new bracha, even in Chad bayit, one house. Como me'igra la'ara, such as from the roof to the ground floor. Or mecheder labayit, or from one room in the house to another. Aval mepina lapina, lo, but not from one corner to the other. So it says here, if I'm snacking in the library and I want to go and move to, and I go and say mincha there in the midrash, and then I come back here, I've changed spots according to Tosfot. I've changed. It's only if I'm in one corner and one corner that I can consider it one spot. So who do we hold like? Do we follow like Rashi or like Tosfot? So if I go upstairs, have I changed my spot? Or no, I'm in the same house and it's okay.
Well, I think our houses today are also like a very different sort of privileged property. And if you think about in different times how many people of one family or many families would occupy one building, and that being a shared home.
Okay, so that's neither. We haven't seen either of those positions of the shared home concept
Well, I'm
here.
just saying that when you say moving from, if I'm going from my dining room to my sitting room,
Because that's exactly the situations it's dealing with here.
Right, but I'm
That's
saying-
brought down in the commentaries.
but often if you're going from the attic to the ground floor, you've gone through different generations of family members' dwelling areas.
It's not being brought there. It's not suggesting that's the reason.
Okay.
I think you're going from eating rooms to sleeping quarters. I don't see that there. I would think there would be a little bit more prescriptive if it was saying it's going from one's domain to another person's domain.
The fact that it says from corner to corner is okay, but from room to room implies that could be your room too. I know what you're saying.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't.
Yeah.
don't see it in the words. Like I'm not. If that's what it was trying to suggest, I would. I mean, I would say Achronim would talk about it, but then no one's yet referring to that scenario that by changing floors, I'm changing who owns that space or who's part of it. I understand multi-generational housing, but I don't see that here. Okay, so many Rishonim agree with Tosfot and write that the correct version of the text of the Gemara is not from place to place, but rather from corner to corner of the same room. In other words, the Gemara is saying that from one room to another in the same house constitutes Shinui Makom, but moving from one corner to the other in the same room does not. We already saw the Shulchan Aruch above, who codifies the Gemara as the halacha using the words, one was eating in this house and went to another house, and contrasts it with moving from one corner to the other. The Mishnah Berurah explains that according to the Shulchan Aruch, changing rooms in the same house is equivalent to moving houses. So if you want to hold that it's because there's different people, there's grandparents in one room and there's parents in another and there's children in another, that could be, but it's not the reason why it's giving. If that would be the case, we may have a different reality when we change spots. But again, once again, if there are people who are sitting in the room in the same table, then a lot of this is moot anyway. So Mishnah Berurah says to another house. The same is true if he goes to another room, that he's also considered changing one's place. The Magen Avraham says it all depends on da'ato le'echol, his intent to eat. V'hu adin kesher ro'eh makomo, and the same is true when he can see his original place. The Be'or Halacha notes that according to this halacha, one who is eating foods on which Shehakol is recited would lechatchila not be permitted to go from one room in the house to another, even for a short time. How is it possible then that today you will commonly walk freely around the house in the middle of eating such foods? After a lengthy discussion, the Be'or Halacha concludes that in such cases, even if one cannot see the original location and did not have intent to move, he has opinions upon which to rely. And if he sees his original place, he is even permitted to do so lechatchila. Okay, and that's what it says, Mikol Makom Noheg Lahakel. And what we're going to get into, and I think we'll probably see this next time, is the rabbis in the Gemara especially had a real problem with people eating on the fly. They really felt, I mean, again, maybe this goes back all the way to Susan's discussion about formality, which is you shouldn't really be snacking around and eating and grazing. That's not really the way for Bnei Adam, for dignified people to eat. We shouldn't be moving around the house snacking. I know, some of us do, but it's a problem. We really should try to be sat, and that's why he's saying, if you are such a person, it seems like to be okay. Yeah, you have what to rely on, even, dare I say it, lechatchila. Okay. What foods are subject to shinui makom? Okay, so again, if we want to hold and follow the opinion of Rav Chisda, okay, that one must recite a new bracha in cases of changing your place, specifically to foods whose bracha need not be recited. So, example, I'm having a non-bread meal. We haven't really addressed what about the 7 species or the 5 grains, okay? The Shivat HaMinim or the Chamishei Minei Dagan, would they change the rationale? Would we treat them like bread and say, you know what, I moved around, I can still come back? And I don't need to do a new bracha and a Birkat Hamazon? Or do I say, no, I'm going to treat them more like Shehakol and Borei Nefashot issues? Rashi says, Aval Dvarim HaTe'unim Bracha Lacharehem Bimkoman, Klomar Bracha Chashuva, for example, an important bracha in its own right. For example, Shivat HaMinin, even for the 7 species, i.e., Bracha Me'en Shalosh, not just Birkat Hamazon. That would also, if I was to move, I would not need to come back. If I started eating grains or I started eating figs or pomegranates, I could say, oh, I'm going to come back to that because I'm having a special one of the 7 species. Tosfot, though, says, Dayan, that wine, b'chol shivat minin, lo havu bichlal derim hatu'unim bracha lacharehem bimkoman, ela pat b'chol minei pat, only bread and all types of bread products. Shemarvachin alav hamotzi, o shema kol minei mezonot. It's only going to be grain, something which really fills you up, and not fruits. Even though shivat haminim, such as grapes and figs and pomegranates, and dates, etc., they're great, but they're not the same as having something made of wheat and barley, whether it's grains, whether it's or spelt or rye or oats, whether it's made out of a cake or it's a cracker or it's bread. Those things fill you up. Those things, I would say, once I've started them, I'd want to come back to them, and so therefore I wouldn't need an after bracha and a new bracha. But wine, because it doesn't fill you in the same way. It doesn't satiate you. It's not the same. You wouldn't have a seudah. I know we talk about it in the Purim seudah, that they did have their meals fixed on wine. Generally, we don't have a halacha of being kovea seudah, of having a fixed meal on wine. We would have wine as part of the meal, but you wouldn't have a liquid meal, okay? Just generally, that's the reason for it. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch rules, Yesh omrim, ששיבת המינים טעונים ברכה לאחריהם במקומם, ויש אומרים תדווקא מיני דגן. Okay, so those who say it could be any of the 7 species, including the fruits, and there are those who say any types of grain. And the Rama adds, and some say yesh omrim davka pat bilvad. Sorry, only pat levad, only bread. So who do we follow like there? In cases such as this one, and this is an important rule of Shulchan Aruch, where the Shulchan Aruch brings 2 opinions and says, Yesh omrim v'yesh omrim. Some say and some say. Many Achronim write that the halacha follows the second opinion. Accordingly, the halacha b'Torah states that Sfaradim, who follow the Shulchan Aruch, hold that grain products are defined as foods that require bracha when one ate, but the other 7 species are not. Okay? The Mishnah Berurah writes that according to most Achronim, one should treat all 7 species as food that do require bracha achrona in the original location, like bread, and according with the first opinion in the Shulchan Aruch. He then cites the conclusion of the Vilna Gaon on the matter that the halacha follows the second opinion. The Mishnah Berurah also notes that the halacha of Shinui Makom also depends upon the status of the various foods with respect to whether their bracha achrona must be recited in their original location. Okay, therefore, to summarize this section, okay, and here's where we're going to finish this off. Number one, according to the first opinion in the Shulchan Aruch, which follows Rashi, and the Achronim that follow it, the category of foods for which one needs not to recite a bracha achrona in the original location includes bread, grain products, and the 7 species. A, for any of these foods, one must recite the bracha achrona in the original location in which one ate. And B, if one leaves in the middle of eating and returns, according to the Ramah, who follows the opinion of Rav Chisda, one need not recite a new bracha rishona on them. But number two, according to the second opinion, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Vilna Gaon, the category of foods for which one need not recite the bracha achrona in the original location includes bread and grain products, but not the Shivat Haminim. Therefore, one must recite the bracha achrona in the original location in which one ate. And B, if one leaves in the middle of eating bread or grain products and returns, according to the Ramah, one need not recite a new bracha rishona on them. And finally, we've got the second Yeshomrim cited in the Ramah of only bread. The third Yeshomrim, only bread is classified as food, for which one need not recite the bracha achrona in the original location. Okay, so therefore you see all these different positions. It's very complicated. So what's the bottom line? What's the bottom line? I think the bottom line is, how formal are you with your meal? How are you eating by yourself? Did you really leave? Did you not really leave? Where were you really going? So if you are having a formal meal with other people and it's bread, there's very little to be concerned about. So if you got up in the middle of a Shabbat meal, you can go back without any consequences. If you're really snacking on your own and you get up and you come back, most likely you've got to start again. Finish the bracha achrona and start again. And if things in position in the middle way, some of those are probably say, check in with me. But in the best situation, you want to try and avoid. Next time on this class, we're going to try and talk about, I need to eat. I'm traveling. I'm on the go. I'm on in the old times, I'd be on a camel. Could be I'm on a cruise. I'm on a plane. What am I doing here? It's a concept of Shinui Makom. We'll find out more later. Take care. Okay.